Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell by the title, today I'm going to be speaking about something that is often shoved under the rug. It's not spoken about often. It's the Sapphire Caricature, the Sapphire stereotype. Last video, I spoke about the Jezebel caricature, the Jezebel stereotype. You guys can go watch that video. It's the previous video. But essentially, I love to make in-depth research about things that concern black women as being a black dark-skinned woman myself, and obviously educating myself, because there's a lot of these caricatures and a lot of these stereotypes that I don't know. There are some things that are spread in social media that I do have an idea of, such as like the angry black woman, or like a few of these stereotypes that are always placed on black women, but there's a lot of these caricatures that I just don't know or didn't know had that deep rooted history of racism with. So I'm really interested to be speaking about that. So today, as you guys can tell by the title, I'm going to be speaking about the Sapphire Caricature, and obviously my source and my sources and the one I've been using for the previous video is the Jim Crow Museum. It's really interesting. I'm learning a lot. I'm educating myself. So essentially, the Sapphire Caricature essentially portrays black women as being very aggressive, very angry, overbearing, very loud, very rude. So if you guys search up the angry black woman, you guys are going to see, let me show you guys images. You guys are going to see how mainstream it has become, how much these ideas are pushed into cinema, how much the ideas are pushed onto social media. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of these things, you know, these, literally a simple Google search, you're going to see a lot of these ideas that are pushed onto the media, you know, of the angry black woman. So essentially, it basically, the history behind that is that it would portray the typical African American woman as being very angry, very sharp with her words, very emasculating. So essentially stripping black men of their manhood, of their masculinity. And obviously, like, she was very aggressive, she was very cruel with her words. So that's essentially the image that they try to push onto the media. So it was essentially pushed from the idea that they tried to portray was essentially black women being very overbearing, very cruel, very aggressive towards black men. So they really tried to, because it was happening during the Jim Crow era. The Jim Crow era happened from the 1870s to the 1960s. So essentially it was the era where there was a lot of segregation, there was a lot of separating blacks and whites. It was a lot of racism, discrimination. So essentially they tried to really push the idea that black homes and black families had all of these issues and had all of these problems, not because of segregation, not because of racism, not because of discrimination, but because there was a black woman in a home who was very emasculating. There was a black woman in a home who stripped a black man of his identity. So that's the image that they tried to push onto people. Hey, these problems in black homes is not because of social economic status, it's not because of disadvantages among the community, it's not because of poverty, it's not because of drugs, it's actually because there's a black woman who's destroying the home. That's literally what they try to push, that black people were essentially creating their own problems within their homes. So essentially they also try to push that image that black women were especially really aggressive towards black men who were unemployed, and because they were jealous of the fact that these black men had eyes for white women, so they tried to use that to portray weaponized jealousy. So they portray these women as essentially displaying a lot of jealousy towards these black men. So they essentially try to portray that black woman as being very undesirable, being very unattractive, being very loud and bitter, and projecting that bitterness onto a black man. Why? Because he prefers to put his eyes on a white woman. So that's the image that they were trying to push onto the media for black women really, really badly. And so yeah, like I said, it's very mainstream, was mainstream, still is mainstream in media, in cinema, everywhere. So essentially they like to, like I said, portray black women as being aggressive, loud, abusive. So essentially by putting that image of a black woman being so masculine and so aggressive. It basically came across as the fact that black women didn't deserve to be protected. They didn't deserve to have protection. They didn't deserve to be courted. And when it comes to dating, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to love, they don't deserve to be courted the same way maybe a white woman or a lighter skinned women would be. These women were essentially seen as subhuman, so they didn't deserve the smallest amount of respect. So these women were seen as being below receiving human respect and human decency. And you even see it a lot today in dating. Like, a lot of black women will speak about their experiences in dating and will speak about the fact that they get treated like options. They don't get taken on dates. They get treated like basically hookups. So a lot of black women will speak about these things. Yeah, sorry for the interruption, but what I was saying is that nowadays, even today, a lot of black women speak about their experiences in dating, speak about how they're treated as hookups, how they're not even treated with basic respect. They're treated as only being seen as a physical attraction that has to be conquered. So that basically explains it. Obviously, like I said, like, being able to shift the blame from blaming the system to blaming black people for their own faults, black people for their mistakes. So essentially, like I said, so by portraying the fact that black women were Sapphire, black women were super aggressive and they destroyed the homes of these black men, instead of looking at the oppression, instead of looking at systemic racism, instead of looking at what destroys black families, instead of looking at poverty, we could just turn around and just blame a black woman and blame black people for their problems. So essentially, that's the image they try to push onto people. So there is a show that is talked about here, and it's called Amos and Andy, and essentially it's a show that essentially pushed that idea of black women being sapphires. So I will show you guys an image. So it was mainstreamed, it was shown to a lot of Americans, it was shown to a million Americans, and it helped really push that image that black women were sapphires. I'm trying to find the show right here. And obviously it was two, if I'm correct, it was two white men who were behind the creation of the show. Okay, I'm just going to double check. Okay, so the show was conceived by Freeman and Charles. So these were two white actors who portrayed the characters as mocking black women. So it aired from 1951 to 1953, and essentially it helped really push that idea of how black women were seen. So essentially it did just, and there was a lot of different shows back then that did push the idea and that stereotype that black women were super loud and super aggressive and hard to deal with. So yeah. And there's also what we call blaxploitation. Blaxploitation is essentially an American subgenre, and it's of crimes, and it's essentially like action movies, and essentially it features a primarily black cast, and it's also primarily watched by black people. So it's like made by black people, essentially for black people. So that's kind of like the idea behind that. And in those type of movies, we have the Jezebel caricature. So we have basically black women presented as being very hypersexual, being erotic, being very warm, and then we also have the caricature, Sapphire Caricature. So that would essentially be presenting black women as being very angry and very aggressive. So they do essentially mix these two caricatures, and they have a sort of combination. So you will see a black woman who's very angry and very aggressive, and she's also very physically attractive and supposed to come across as being very sexy. And essentially in these type of movies, she's not only angry at black men, because obviously I told you guys that And it's shown here that the Sapphire caricature is black women directing her anger at black men. It's not only black men. She also directs her angers at white people. She directs her angers at white women, especially that's through jealousy. But she usually directs her anger at anyone who supposedly comes for her. But her anger is mainly towards black men. But in these type of subgenre, in these type of movies, her anger is not only directed towards black men and people in general, it's also directed towards the need to obtain justice. So it would be against criminals, um against the villain, essentially. So she's just an angry character who is very physically attractive, and essentially they're combining these type of caricatures. And I'll show you guys one type of it that's called Kofi. I hope I'm saying it right, but essentially that would be an example. So you guys can see here, like, she's physically attractive. She has, like, you can guys see that she comes across as being a sexual figure because she has, there's emphasis on her breasts, there's emphasis on her body, on her toned arms. She's a black woman, she's holding a gun, she wants justice, she's angry, she's aggressive. So that essentially combines these type of caricatures, and obviously that emerged around the 1970s. And yeah, so there was a lot of different movies and shows that did portray black women that way, and kind of like kept pushing that image of the way black women should be. So that kind of like contributed to labeling black women in some sort of way and putting them into either being, like I said, the caricature, so either being physically very unattractive, overbearing, almost like a burden, not approachable, very ugly, very stupid, or being super sexually attractive, being attracting men, being very warm and what's the word I'm looking for? Very different, very exotic. And then we have the Sapphire caricatures. So obviously a woman being angry and very aggressive and very mean, and then she directs her anger at everyone, and she's so bitter and she's so jealous and she's so undesirable. So obviously you guys can just a bit understand how exhausting it is for black women, because these stereotypes are still today being pushed out, still today being used to describe black women. So now black women have to just kind of walk on eggshells, because they do something, they're put into one box, they do something, they're put into another box, they do something else, they're put into a third box. Like, it's constantly women being labeled under different new things that people are creating every single day. And you have to navigate their dating lives, they have to navigate their lives, they have to navigate everything that they do, they have to navigate the system, just constantly worrying, am I going to be labeled as this? Am I going to be labeled as that? Am I doing something wrong? Am I too angry? Am I not approachable? What next? And obviously in here they talk also about the Michelle Obama as being Sapphire. I remember online on Instagram a little bit, people were essentially calling Michelle Obama a man. People were saying, oh, she's very manly, her face is very this and that. People were essentially labeling her as being very manly. And obviously she's a woman who's very involved in politics. She's a woman who speaks up. She's a woman who doesn't back down. She speaks up about the struggle. She speaks up about the injustice. She never backs down. She's not scared. So obviously people now are seeing that, and people are labeling her as being very manly and being emasculating and looking like a man. Like, whatever you do, people are just gonna take advantage to label a black woman every single time. Okay, I'm just reading to make sure I didn't forget anything. So, black women have had to endure and are still enduring stereotypes, constantly walking on eggshells. What am I going to be labeled as next? How am I going to have to navigate my life and worry about 1 microaggression, 2 microaggressions, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where am I going to be placed? And it's obviously exhausting. And these caricatures have been, you would think, since they've been there for so long, people have essentially let them go. No, today they're just used as different labels. So today we wouldn't say, well, people don't say the Sapphire Caricature, people just say the angry black woman stereotype, right? So it's just to say I really wanted to speak about that because it's just constantly exhausting to see black women genuinely just being stripped out of their characters, out of their traits, being humiliated. I didn't say that right, but it's okay. English is not my first language. But you see these women just constantly being stripped out of their decency and privacies and constantly being labeled and constantly having to navigate everything in their lives with extreme caution. But yeah, so it's just the label society has placed on black women. And obviously, as a black woman, to all my black women out there watching, like, you are beautiful, you are kind, you are loved. Genuinely, if you do ever end up in a situation where you feel like you're being sexualized, you feel like you're being labeled in some type of way, get out of there. And it's crazy because it's almost every black woman that I speak to that has some sort of horror story to tell me, and it's crazy. But be strong, be beautiful, don't let these labels define you because they don't define you. Black women can be bubbly, black women can be strong without it meaning that they're emasculating or it meaning that they're masculine. Black women can be loved, black women can be courted properly like regular women, because it's not an extra criteria and it's not an extra box to check. It's just treating her as a regular woman with decency that she deserves and respect that she deserves. And black women are not undesirable, black women are not unwanted, black women are not too masculine. Just because you speak up and you're strong and you're fierce does not make you masculine. I've been told that I look like a man several times in middle school and high school. I've been told many times that I look like a man, that I act like a man. There's no way to act like a man. There's no way to look like a man. You're feminine. You're beautiful. You're feminine enough. I remember I made a video and I was speaking about the fact that growing up, it was really hard for me to feel like I was feminine enough because of obviously being around and being told by people constantly that I just wasn't feminine enough and I'm not feminine. But what is being feminine? There is no word by word definition of what femininity is and what it is to be feminine that is not rooted within white supremacy. And that's not a definition that fits black women. Therefore, that's not a definition that fits you. You're feminine you're in your own way. You're feminine in the way that pleases you, and you're feminine enough, and that's on period. But anyways, I will be also making another video about another caricature that caught my eye while I was making research about this caricature. I'd like to open the eyes of black women, and I'd also like to speak about the fact that if you do feel like it's a microaggression and you do feel like people are labeling you, 99% of the time they are labeling you, because these come from deep-rooted racism, that was these deep-rooted stereotypes that were being mainstreamed, that are still mainstreamed, that are rooted in history many years ago. You would think that the angry black women stereotype is a today thing or a 2026 or 2025 thing. No, it's from the 1870s, sorry. It's from the 1870s. You would think that the Jezebel stereotype of black women being hypersexualized is maybe a 2010 thing. No, it comes from the slavery times. Anyways, if you guys have anything to say, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in another lifetime. And if you guys want to argue in the comments, I also have time in my day. I will see you guys.